Yes, seeking knowledge is, they say that if you want to hide something from black people, put it in a book.
Really?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Except if that black man is a lawyer. So many of these things that we've heard, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Sheikh Saeed Mubarak and Professor Sultan Byrd, yeah. Oh, you are late. Brother Muhammad, you are late. You missed. So we thank Allah for both of them. These are very inspiring narratives that we've heard today. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase both of them in knowledge and reward them for what they have presented to us today, beginning with Umm Ayman, who has been, literally we've not been reading much about her. But to find out that this is the woman who knew Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from the moment he came out of his mother's womb until he died. She knew him from the moment he came out of his mother's womb and held him and was there till the last moment that he passed away. And that statement of hers is something that I always remember. When they went to her, when she heard about Rasulullah's death, and when Abu Bakr and Abu Bakr and Umar went to her, and she said her only sadness is the fact that Wahy, revelation, has ended. That we will not get revelation anymore. That was her main concern. Thank you for all the narratives about Ayman. I'm very sure there will be more questions. We have a whole hour for questions and answers and answer. And to Professor Sultan's presentation, I'm so glad that we are together, because what Professor Sultan talked about is exact. If any of you if you talk to anyone who was my student in U.S. history, either at Harold Washington College or in Malcolm X College, anybody who was my student would tell you I always start U.S. history from Andalus, from Spain, from Muslims going to Spain, 711 AD, when Tariq ibn Ziyad led the Muslim forces into Spain. Because without Muslims going to Spain, there would have been no Columbus, there would have been no America. And if there were America, it would not be as we know it today. If the Muslims had not gone to Spain, that would not have been here. And I mentioned here in our previous talks how Columbus' own journal, in his own journal, he talked about a mosque that he found in Cuba. In his own journal, he talked about going back and seeing a shipload coming from Africa, coming from the West African coast, coming towards America. And I'm so glad you brought the question of the currents, because anytime you listen to American Eurocentric historians, they will say Columbus found a current that if you get 100 nautical miles away into the ocean, it will automatically bring you to America. That's a lie. That's a lie. Mansa Abu Bakr and his forces, the ships that they had, the canoes, it was just canoes. It wasn't the big ships. But they knew that the moment you paddle yourself 100 nautical miles into the Atlantic, you will automatically end up in the Caribbean. And that is what they were doing for over 100 years before Columbus ever stepped foot here. So they always like to give credit to those who don't deserve it. And the ships that they use, Professor Sultan mentioned that also, the astrolabe that they were using, that is the sectant, the GPS, was invented by Muslims. Muslims invented what they were using as the astrolabe for navigation. So, matter of fact, when Columbus came, he made sure he had Pedro Alonso Nino, who was an African, on that ship with him.
Yeah, they some schools have a picture of his name in there as the navigator on the Santa Maria.
And he was
Stevie Wonder
African.
did a song.
Yes.
Stevie Wonder did a song, and he mentions him, the navigator on the ship.
On the ship that brought Columbus. This, we thank Allah for who we are. We thank Allah for making us Muslims. We thank Allah for making us Muslims. We thank Allah for Ni'mat al-Islam. May we continue to be very proud of that. Let us now open the floor, because if I get started, I could go on and on. I don't want to re-lecture what the lecture that has been presented. So let's start with questions. Oh yeah, no, the professor has one. So to Saeed.
I guess you can hear the people speak.
Okay, so Saeed has one, and I will have this one. Okay, that's good. When you mentioned Ethiopia, being so fortunate, somebody was smiling so big. Somebody had a big smile on his face. When you talk about Ethiopia, I'm not going to mention the name.
I guess that will be my first question.
Okay, What's your first question?
During the time of the Prophet,
Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
in another understanding, when the word Ethiopia or Habashi is mentioned, I've read that it used to refer to the whole of Africa, but not just that small land of Africa.
Okay,
so I
okay.
wanted you to talk about that.
All right, thank you for that question. Matter of fact, I know Professor Sultan will also want to add to that. Thank you for that question, Brother Musa. Very, very important question. One of the justifications that was used for enslaving Africans here is a story that they use from the Bible of Abraham and his 3 sons. And that his son, what's his name? Ham. He had Seth, Japheth, and Ham. And in the Bible story, they say that Ham saw his father drunk and naked. And that he went and was talking about it to his brothers. When the father and the brothers, they just ignored him, took something and covered up their father. And when the father woke up and found himself covered so comfortable, asked what happened, and they told him, Ham saw your nakedness and he was making fun of you. And the biblical story goes that Noah cursed Ham. And it said that Ham moved to Cush, which refers to the area now referred to as Ethiopia, and that those Cushites are Africans. And that the curse of Noah on Ham is the reason why we black people are always the heroes of wood and at the bottom of the ladder. Now, that is the Cushite, the biblical part referring to Ethiopia and using it for the entire continent of Africa. The other story is that of Ifriqiya. There was a king in Tunisia who was known as Ifrikus. And so the Arabs used to refer to the entire continent as Ifriqiya, using Ifrikus, who was the king in Tunisia. And this is why when pirates, kidnapped Ahmed, who was an Arab sailor, and they took him and gave him as a gift to Pope Leo X. Pope Leo asked him to write about his travels, and he referred to the continent as Ifriqiya. So based on that story, the Pope decided to name the continent Africa, and he called this brother Ahmed, they renamed him Leo Africanus. So they refer to the continent as Africa from that. That's why when you go to the continent, Africans are not Africans. I mean, a Mandinka is a Mandinka, a Wolof is Wolof, a Zulu is Zulu, a Yoruba is a Yoruba. People know themselves based on ethnicity. Now, so that is the content there. The other aspect was also that Ethiopia was used by the Greeks. The word Ethiopia comes from 2 words, Ethios, which is burnt, meaning burnt, B-U-R-N-T, and ops for face. So they say that Africans, because we are so close to the equator, that's why we are black. So people of the burnt face, Ethiopia, and so they use Ethiopia to refer to the entire continent. So when Habashi was being referred to during the time of Rasulullah, you have to understand the context. Most of those who were black, who were in Arabia, who were in contact with the peninsula, were mostly from Ethiopia and from the Horn of Africa, Yemen, and other places. So this is why the term Habash came to refer to the country. I'll let Professor Sultan take over from here, please.
I mean, you got it. You covered all the three, but it's a similarity which for the word more. Because the Greeks, when they encountered them, it was Morsi or something. My Greek is not that good. So, but it just, when they saw them, it was dark, and that's what it meant. And then also, but when they went to Latin, it became Moria. Okay, that's why you get Mauritania. When the Romans came, Mauritania. Mora means black. Tania, land, Mauritania. And then when it get to English, it becomes more. So that's the etymology of the word more. And some people say, oh, we Moorish Americans. I said, yeah, okay, but that's historically, the word is a physical description. It's not an ethnic group.
And it's not a religion.
Right, it's just...
A matter of fact, among the Spanish, those who are of black origin, they will say, we are not Negra, we are Moreno. If you see somebody who is a Latina, and the last name is Moreno, it comes from the Moorish background of black, yes.
Okay, I guess we'll go to the next question.
Okay.
One of the sisters, she says she wants to, I guess she wants to speak on the mic so that she can...
Okay, all right, give her the mic.
Before we go to that, let's answer some questions here. It says, did the nation of America come from the early settlers? Did the nation of America comes from the early settlers?
I think the answer to that is yes, because you have the 13 colonies who broke away from England, because remember, they were up under King George, right? They were up under that, and they broke away and established their own country with their own constitution. The birthday or birthright is July 4th, 1776.
Okay, let me rephrase that question. Did the nation of Islam come from the early settlers?
Oh,
no.
No.
No, they have nothing to do with it.
No. Oh, you don't want to give us attire? What's going on? Camera. Oh, when I see attire, I gotta make sure that I get my own.
This will be for Professor Sultan. It says, how do you take control of the narrative of what happened in history, since it's not in the history books?
That's a very difficult and important question. And what we're doing now is part of it. We have to establish our own institutions. Yes. And we have to teach our own history.
The other answer to that is what he said, we are doing in the classroom. If any of you get the opportunity to teach history, if it is African American history or US history, make sure that you always start from there, from the Spanish connection. We could have shown you the map, actually. You know, the Mediterranean, when they were looking for alternative route to get to India, to be able to get access to all those materials that the Muslims had introduced to them, the Mediterranean Sea could have been the fastest route to get to India. But because of the fact that Muslims were controlling the trade in that region, and the Silk Road, which is the land road that they could have taken, was also controlled by Muslims. So they have to look for alternative routes. In looking for the alternative route, the Portuguese came in contact with the West African coast and started by kidnapping Africans and taking them to the islands as slaves. All right? And then Columbus, because he didn't want to take the same route that the Portuguese were taking. By the way, Columbus' wife was a Portuguese. Okay? And so he went on one of those Portuguese exploratory trips and wanted to command a ship. And the Portuguese told him, "You're not qualified to command our ship. We have better sailors." So he was, his ego. He went to Spain, to Isabella, to say, "Look, the Portuguese are doing this. I can do it better." And his calculation was that the distance from Spain to India was only 3,000 miles, whereas the actual mileage was 13,000 miles, taking that western route. So if he had not stumbled, and that's the word I use in my class, if he had not stumbled upon Hispaniola, which is Haiti and Dominican Republic, if he had not by accident stumbled upon that place, the sharks would have had a feast. And the sharks would have been still celebrating today that they had some good meal in 1492. But he was fortunate enough to stumble upon this land. And why do we know that they would have all been dead? The three ships that he came on, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. The Nina and the Pinta were destroyed beyond repair. The Santa Maria was also damaged, but could be fixed. So they took the parts from the Nina and the Pinta to fix the Santa Maria for him to make a return trip to Spain to report what he found. And guess what he did? The Native Americans who welcomed him, the Taínos, who were so generous and kind to him, he lured 50 of them onto the ship, took them to Spain, and sold them into slavery. That's how he rewarded them. Matter of fact, in his own words, he said, they were so generous, they're so kind, and whatever they have, they're willing to give. But with a few men and a few guns, we can make them do anything we want. So right on landing, look at his mindset. Wa alaikum salam.
Okay.
I will stop talking. You guys take over from now.
How much of the North African influence has been preserved in present day Islam as it relates to Islamic Orthodox practices, schools of thought, and jurisprudence, and how has that been translated in North America?
You're talking about Orthodox Islam, Said.
Repeat the question?
Yes, ma'am.
That's very much historical.
No, it's not historical. It's theological and historical.
Okay, I can summarize.
Okay.
Basically, I'm asking how much of North African Islamic influence is now in present day Islam that we can identify with the contributions that both of the speakers talked about. How can we see that now in Islam? Is it in our practices? Is it in our jurisprudence, our schools of thought? What influence of whatever region you want to, take from the continent of Africa that we can see now in Islam that we can say this is North African influence? Because of course, things have evolved in Islam, and all places for Allah, they will stay on the path. So what North African influence can be?
My struggle with your question, sister, is the geographical when you say North African. Just a minute. I heard you. I'll answer, inshallah. Hope I'll be able to answer the question. When you say North African, that is where I was thrown off a little bit. Because when you look at Islamic influence, Islam is Islam. Wherever Islam goes, one thing about Islam that has made it to spread the way it has spread is that Islam does not go to any place and tell the people, change who you are. Islam is adaptable to every culture wherever it goes, as long as that culture is not shirk, where it is not associating partnership with God. You come to West Africa, one of the things why West Africans, I give you West Africans example, that adopted Islam, it did not tell them, do not wear your agbada, that is a big boo-boo that we wear. It did not say, do not wear your traditional outfit. It did not say everybody should be walking around and have a turban and have and have a jilbab. You are able to, continue with your way of life. But you just have to believe that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is a prophet, is a messenger. Unlike Christianity that came and want everybody to change. You have to behave like a European. It happened to the Native Americans here. Wherever Christianity went, they want those people to throw away everything they have. You go to colonial, when you look at colonial movies or you read colonial books about colonial European settlement in various places, people were being whipped. Even here, Pope was whipped because he was practicing his traditional ways. So unlike Christianity, Islam adapts. So the universality of Islam is still here and it's everywhere. Now, coming to the West African context, what you have here, when you talk about North Africa, you can talk about to those who are from maybe Egypt or from Morocco or from Tunisia or Algeria or Sudan, right? They have their own traditions in addition to being Muslims. For example, that jalbab the brother is wearing in the back there, the cream or beige jalbab. Stand up, brother, if you don't mind. All right? That's a Moroccan outfit. Right? That's Moroccan. So in terms of outfit, thank you, brother. You can say. In terms of outfit, we dress. One thing you can say is that the cultures of Islam from wherever it is in the world, we've all adopted it. So you find it all over. But when it comes to the Aqidah in terms of theology, the theology has not changed. Except when you go to, say, West African groups. For example, if you go among the Nigerians, right? Nigerians who are Salafi, you see the way they practice their Islam is according to Salafi ways. Those who are Tijaniya, right? Tijaniya, Tariqa, Sufi, you see them practicing their Sufi ways. Those who are followers of Ahmadu Bamba, you see them do their own way of zikr. Those who are from those Rifa'iyya, that is another Tariqa. So depending on those levels of traditions that they brought from their homes, you see them trying to express those traditions here. For example, if you go to a naming ceremony being performed, either among a Ghanaian or Senegalese or Moroccan, you see that the way they will do their naming ceremony, even though they still follow the Islamic simple way of the Sunnah, but they will have some traditions that they include, which identifies where they come from. So that is, I hope I'm able to, I hope I was able to answer your question.
Can I add something?
Thank you. Yes. Brother Said want to add something.
Alhamdulillah. You see the, okay. Alhamdulillah.
You see the influence and the impact that this previous people have on Islam is not something we can actually figure out now. Islam wouldn't have been easy for most Africans to embrace if it did not come through all of those countries that our professor talked about. So it wouldn't be easy for everybody to go to Mecca to take Islam. So that Islam came to Africa, that at least Ethiopia had this first touch with Islam, it was easier for other parts of Africa to embrace Islam. So it wouldn't have been easy. So all of the inputs that those early people or early settlers put into Islam is what made Islam to be as easy as possible for all other African members to embrace it. So without the input, it might be easy. The majority of states in Nigeria, most of them got Islam later in the year. So the fact that it would resonate with the fact that some Africans already accepted Islam made it easier for them. That's just what I wanted to add.
Yes, that brother has had his hand up for a long time. Yeah. Well, Islam, sir.
This question is direct to Professor Sultan. So say this, I got two questions, right?
$50 for the second question. Go ahead, man.
So what was the you were talking about navigation, right? And Abu Bakr.
Abu Bakr II.
Yeah, Abu Bakr II. I guess he was the grandson of Mansa Musa.
The grandfather.
Grandfather.
Okay, alhamdulillah. All right, so what was the tool that was used? That's what I'm saying. I need to know the name of the tool that was used to navigate through the seas.
The sail, the Latin.
The Latin, yeah.
Okay, so wasn't his name after a Muslim brother? What was the name of the tool that was used to navigate through the sea?
Latin.
Or the Latin?
Latin, but he had to have knowledge of the currents also. It was a package, it's a process. It's just not just one thing. He had to know, because the currents slow down, then what you gonna do? So the sail, the wind, he worked both of them.
Alhamdulillah. Okay, so my second question is, so they got a book called The Golden Age of the Moors, right? Mm-hmm. It talks about how the Muslims was over there in what that was, that was Spain, right?
Andalusia.
Yes.
You were late. We talked about it.
Right. Okay, so they was over there, according to history, for what, 800 years?
715 to 14 to like 15
to 1492.
Well,
781 years.
Yeah.
Right.
To be exact.
From my reading and studying, I'm asking you, right? What caused the Muslims to lose that territory over there? But I'm saying, from what I heard was that the Moors had came over there first. Then the Arabian Muslims came over there, and they had to start beefing with one another under the Races Act or something like that, right? Which caused the division and allowed the Queen Isabella
Aki. Number one, the scholarship on that is incorrect. Okay, so the shaitan is what happened. Okay, because they began power. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts. Whether you African or whether you Arab, it doesn't make any difference, right? Because power got in the way, and shaitan was able to manipulate that.
And to add to that, the Turks, what came to be the Ottoman Empire, those Turks, they were under Muslim rule as slaves.
Mamluks.
They were as slaves. All right? You have to remember, the caliphate was first based in Medina. Okay? And then it was moved to Iraq. And when Andalus was established, when Muslims established power there, they saw that this is the center, they came in. You have to, whoever is the emir of the time has to have the say so. So it's not about race or anything like that. Matter of fact, when the Spanish came here, the first Africans who came with them, they were not slaves. They were explorers. They were soldiers. And we have to put another thing into context. I think there's a big elephant in the room here. A brother asked me last week, and I told him I wish you had asked a question for everybody to hear. When we talk about slavery and Islam, you will hear some people who want to attack Islam call slavery across the trans-Saharan desert, they want to call it the Islamic slave trade. There was nothing like Islamic slave trade. Nothing like that. Yes, Arabs were the ones who were doing the slave masters, but many of those Arabs are not Muslims either. There are Muslims that are not Muslims. But you have to understand one thing. In Islam, when a slave becomes a Muslim, he's no longer a slave. Even Umm Ayman was a slave. She was not a slave. She was a Muslimah. Look at the history of Islam and slavery. And you look in the Quran where it says the highest form of righteousness is to free a slave. You don't find that in the Bible. And those who call that a trans-Saharan slave trade, Islamic slave trade, you will not hear them call the transatlantic slave trade the Christian slave trade. They wouldn't call it that. You wouldn't even hear them call it the European slave trade. They would say transatlantic, using the geography. But when it comes to Muslim involvement, or the Arab slave trade, the Islamic, it's a subtle way to attack Islam, knowing fully well that African Americans are accepting Islam. And so they use that sensitivity to attack Islam, to make us to begin to look at Islam another way. So please, let us get that into context. The other context I want to give all of us, the slaves who were in Spain were soldiers. If someone is your slave and you arm him, and he has guns, and he's your slave, what is the interpretation for that? You better treat him well. Because if you don't, what would he do? He would turn that gun on you. And that is what the Turks did to the Arabs. They turned the guns on the Arabs, led by Osman, and then formed the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman comes from the name Usman, who was their leader. They turned the guns on the Arabs and took over the Muslim, the Islamic Empire. The Caliphate. And that's how they established the Ottoman Empire. So please, let us get the context. Whenever we are talking, when people throw that at us, know much about Islam's position on slavery so you can be able to defend your faith, inshallah.
I'm just going to make a couple of announcements. We're going to pray at 9 o'clock. So just so everybody knows that, there are a few people that want to leave and there's a black. So we want a Subaru, a white Subaru that's parked in the parking lot to be moved. And we also want a VW truck with a Chile license plate to be moved. Thank you.
Is this thing on? Yes. I wanted to mention, they were talking about the Arab slave trade. There's a corridor, it's called the Suhail. The Suhail is from the Atlantic Ocean all the way to the Red Sea. And this was a trade corridor. And the predominant trade goods was slaves, salt, and gold. It was 1492. It was going on 1,000 years before that. It's everybody on the continent. It's another trade that's not really mentioned about. You have to really study the area, and it's called the silent trade. The silent trade, the gold is, the gold, it was so much gold in West Africa, it was unbelievable. But it was a certain tribe that used to go in the mines and get it, right? And they would go get the gold. They set the gold out, right? And the people would bring the salt, because it was trying to get salt. They set the salt out. If they like the salt, okay, then they put some gold out, right? And ain't nobody there at all. They just put it there, come back, get it. If it's not agreeable, nothing moves. But if it's agreeable, then they move it, okay? But they all everybody was dealing with that corridor, the Suhail. It's called the Suhail, okay? And everybody was trading in that. And some Afrocentric people, they call it the Arab slave trade. That's incorrect. Okay, everybody was working at it. It's like going to Walmart. Everybody go there.
Was Prophet Muhammad was he dark in color?
No.
I have no indication.
I can answer that.
Yeah.
The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam dark in color? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, according to what we read about him, is not dark. He wasn't dark in color. So, if he was dark in color, we probably would have referred to him as an African, right? Or probably African descendant. So, what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Arabi, and Arab, none of them as long as I know, none of them was dark in color. So the Prophet ﷺ was not dark in color, and then we can now refer to him as being. Yes, they are dark Arabs, but as much as that, we can now refer to him as white. So, but for Arab heritage, majority of what we see today, our Rasul ﷺ will be majorly referred to as being white in all sense of honesty.
Let me answer you.
I would say,
Yafi, if the Prophet ﷺ was dark in color, it would have definitely been mentioned. And the reason why I say that is because all the seerah that you read about the Sahabi who were darker, you know, like Bilal and the rest of them that we mentioned, they are like those who came from Yemen and Habashi, they are dark color, it's mentioned. It was very clear. So if Rasulullah ﷺ was dark in color, it would have definitely been mentioned. So if anybody tells you he was dark in color, please don't believe it. It is not. Because because the reason why I say that, because I have heard that several times. I've heard that from, you know, some of our brothers. The reason why I say that is because, see, if others who were with him, the Sahabas who were with him, who were darker, they were all mentioned. And the discrimination that was being meted out to them was mentioned as a result of their dark skin. This is why in his farewell, Khutbatul Wida, that he mentioned the fact that there is no difference between the Arab and the non-Arab, the black and the white, and he spoke directly to that because he's an Hashemite. He's from the Hashim, you know, the Hashim clan. And these were Arabs for sure. Okay, we know his ascendancy, his ancestry, right? And his ancestry tracing all the way to Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam, he was not dark in color. If he was, it would have been mentioned. So the fact that it was not mentioned, right? And while others are mentioned, like Zayd ibn Harith, who married Ayman, right? The fact that they are mentioned, because they will tell you that they are Arab, but they are very dark from Yemen. You see my point? So if he was dark Arab, it would have been mentioned. So if you read any book and they say it's a revisionist history, I've read it. No, it's a genuine question. It's a genuine question. I know. I've heard it. And it's not new. I've been hearing that for a long time. Yes. There are some times when we want to say things to give us our pride, black pride. This is not one of them. All right? Thank you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum. I think I want to make one comment first before I ask the question.
Oh, yes.
I think the purpose of this lecture is not to elevate black people on top of other people or to downgrade black people on top of other people. As our Prophet ﷺ told us, that no man is better than the other one. The black is no better than the Arab is no better than the white. The one who is the best amongst us are those who fear Allah from us. So the purpose of this lecture is mainly to clarify the role of black men within Islam. That black men has contributed in Islam in the evolution of human beings, and that we are no less. But that doesn't mean that we are any better than anybody. And that just because you are black doesn't mean you are less or more. So I just wanted to make that comment, and I think that's what the chef was trying to say. And I'm sorry to do that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. He's making comment. Is that a comment or question?
No, I said I will make one comment and have two questions.
Oh, two questions. Okay, I'll do what Professor Sultan said. You can afford to pay it, so $100 for the second question.
Whatever the chef. Okay, I know growing up, mainly back home, we have learned the history of America. And as there's the two sides of the history. About Amerigo Vespucci, I'm probably sure you've heard about him. What the time difference between Amerigo Vespucci and
Ahmed what?
Amerigo Vespucci.
The one who named America.
Oh, Amerigo Vespucci.
Yeah,
Okay,
they
okay.
said that he's the one.
Vespucci.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or which one of them came before Christopher Columbus? What's the time difference between them two? And was there any connection between Amerigo Vespucci and
Vespucci?
Vespucci, yeah. Yeah, different connection, right? Between him and the Muslim world. That's one question. The second question I have is, since we're talking about Black history, we all have heard about the oppression of the Western countries toward Black people. So I want to know if there is any evidence of China, how they have dealt with the Black people within them, how they have dealt with them, either through conquering their land and Russia.
Okay.
I can take the geopolitical question.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of, we know people in Ghana. We have family members in Ghana, and they address how China is, digging mines, leaving. They might build something here, but they leave, messed up land there, and they are taking resources too. They seem to.
I know the actual reality. I'm just talking about previously, because as we know how certain countries have dealt with Black people. Let's say when you go to Germany, they have eradicated all Black slaves. We know that in history. To the point people think there were no Black people in Germany, but there were some, but they have eradicated them. But they killed them all, okay? And other races have also dealt with Black people and Muslim in a very vile way. As we all know how Afghanistan was invaded by Russia before the United States came. So my question is, through history, were there any conquest of the Eastern countries like Russia and the communist countries, mainly, dealing with African people through trade or through slavery or whatever, and how have they dealt with them when they had the upper power?
In history, I'll go straight to Russia. Again, but before I continue, there's a book that I would advise all of you to, if you are able to get it at the library. I gave it to a brother last week, yes. It's Slavery, a World History. Slavery, a World History by Milton Melzer. In that book, it talks about slavery from time immemorial, and they update it every other year, show that slavery is still going on even as we speak. And after looking at slavery all over the world, the conclusion is that what made American slavery different is because this is the only country where slavery was defined on the basis of race. This is the only country. In all other countries, in all other societies, social status has defined a person's position. Only America, beginning from 1641, defined slavery on the basis of race. And then Black people came to be identified with that. If you look at even the word slave it didn't originate with Black people. The word slave started with the Slavic people.
Correct.
The Slavic people, they were being enslaved by French and Italians in the Mediterranean. That's where the word slave came from.
Because the people from Khazaria came and
Okay,
that.
you can add that too. So, now, having said that, in Russia, the Ottoman Sultan gave a gift to the king of Russia, Tsar Alexander. The name of the slave that he gave to the Sultan, the Tsar, that is the king of Russia, was Ibrahim Hannibal, who was taken from East Africa. Ibrahim Hannibal was a slave to the king. But guess what? He became a general in the Russian army. and won victory against the French. So the king rewarded him with land. He became member of the aristocracy. Hannibal had only a daughter, but his grandson, Alexander Pushkin, inherited what his grandfather had. Pushkin became a poet and so popular that he is known today in Russia as the father of modern Russian literature. His grandfather was a slave. Today in Russia, he is known as the father of modern Russian literature. Why? Because at the time Pushkin came up, if you've been to Moscow, there's a place called, the Red Square. The Red Square, beautiful, beautiful place. When you look up the skies, it's like, I was there. I stayed 6 weeks there. When Pushkin was narrating his poems, at that time, to show that you are part of the intelligentsia, you speak French, you don't speak Russian. He came up and he was reciting his poems in Russian and made Russians to see the romantic and the beauty of their own language. And that is why he's known as the father of modern Russian literature. Right? Why did I give you this example? Here is a slave, and look at within a second generation what became of him. In America, you're a slave, your father is a slave, your grandfather is a slave, you will continue, the slave will continue as an inheritance, never stop. Right? Now, with other African countries, the Eastern Europeans invade any African country? They had no reason to. Russia had Alaska. America took it from them. America bought it from them, sorry. They didn't take it from them, they bought it from them. During the slave trade, the countries that were involved in the slave trade directly were mostly Western European countries. Now, would the Eastern Europeans have been involved if they had the chance? We could not say. We could not say. But the Western Europeans had the upper hand, and they used it.
I got a question for the audience. We'll see if y'all paying attention.
Good.
Okay. And this is a question that I usually ask my class about the middle of the semester. Okay. So the question is, which came first? Slavery or racism and white supremacy? Now, for slavery, let's see hands that say slavery came first. One.
What country are we talking about?
We're talking about this one we in.
The world.
The world.
No, I'm talking about America. Because we dealing with America. We dealing with that, but our primary focus is America, correct? Okay, so now let me see the hands that say slavery came first in America. Okay, okay. Now, who say racism and white supremacy came first? Some of y'all ain't taking the test. What's up?
I say they come hand in hand.
Say that again.
They come hand in hand first.
Slavery came first. All right, that's the wrong answer.
They come hand in hand.
Okay, and then we're gonna make this is kind of easy to solve, right? And so how do we solve this? Which came first? If we ain't here, where's white supremacy and racism? It ain't here.
It won't be.
It ain't here. See, the thing that most of us don't understand, because we know the 13th Amendment, it ended slavery, right? But we was a slave society. In a slave society, you have to have a structure to maintain that. The structure is racism and white supremacy. So you eliminated the chattel slavery part by making chattel slavery illegal in the United States of America, but the apparatus that maintained it, you did nothing about it. System is still here. It's the system. is the problem.
Oh, we forgot to answer another question. Amerigo Vespucci and Columbus. Amerigo Vespucci came around 1497. Columbus was 1492. So Columbus came first. But Amerigo Vespucci had strong publicity apparatus behind his voyage. He was well publicized. That is the reason why he got this place named after him. Columbus actually did not land on any part of mainland America. He never did. He was mainly in the Caribbean, places like Cuba, which he thought was China. Believe it or not, yeah. Columbus thought Cuba was China. Cuba, Jamaica, Trinidad, Haiti, and Dominican Republic, which was named by his brother.
I thought his son was the governor there.
No, his brother.
Oh, okay.
So his brother. And by the way, the other thing when you were speaking, Professor Sultan, talking about those who were Muslims who were attacking the ships, the moment the slave ship landed, and they would attack the ships and free the Muslims on that ship. Trinidad and Tobago was founded by those Muslims. Maroons. Those Maroons founded Trinidad and Tobago. Oh, by the way, do you know that the first free black town, officially free black town in America, can anyone guess where it was?
Mississippi.
No.
Mississippi.
No.
South Carolina.
No.
Chicago.
I'm talking about in the Americas.
Oh, America.
In the Americas, so North and South America. First independent black town.
I would say Haiti.
No. No.
You saying town, not a country. Right?
Town.
In America.
Yes. Mohammed, I would like you to give whoever gets it a gift, okay?
Jamaica.
Your book. What is it, sister?
Free black town.
It's in Florida, she said.
Oh, no. Okay, nobody gets it. Mexico. Mexico is 16. Mexico is 16 in Veracruz. Mexico, the town is called Yanga, Yanga. Yanga in Mexico, in Veracruz region, 1609. That town was established in 1609. Yes. No. Mexico, the country Mexico. I don't speak Spanish. Look. The first time I knew the meaning of hola, let me tell you guys this. I was in Barcelona in 2006, attending the Parliament of World Religious Conference. And every time I come to the hotel, the lady would say, hola, hola, hola. The receptionist. And in Yoruba language, hola is a name. So I told her one day, I said, every time I come, you call me hola, hola. My name is not hola. And then she looked at me, Nekamu, and said, Mr. Rufai, hola is hello. I said, oh my God, you mean I came all the way from Chicago to learn how to say hello in Barcelona? But thank you for that, Mexico. So there's a town called Yanga in Mexico. Okay, 1609, that town was established. Okay, it's the oldest black town in the Western Hemisphere. The second one that was established is San Lorenzo dos Negros, also in Mexico. 1617, 2 years before the first blacks ever set foot in what we call the United States of America today. 2 years before the first black ever set foot in what we call the United States of America, you had independent free black towns, 2 independent free black towns in Mexico. What am I trying to tell you? There were blacks in Mexico for 117 years before any black set foot in what we call the United States of America today. Secondly, only 5%, of all the enslaved Africans who were brought to this hemisphere came to the United States of America. 550,000 to be exact. The largest went to Brazil.
Oh, yeah.
Where my great-great-grandfather was a slave and was involved in a slave rebellion in 1836. When you Google what is called the Malay Revolt of Bahia, 1836, they call it Malay because they were Muslims. They planned the whole rebellion in a mosque in the month of Ramadan. They were Muslims in Brazil, 1836. The Portuguese were able to attack them. They succeeded in killing some of them, and those that they arrested, they deported them from Brazil. Some ended up in Nigeria, in Lagos. Some ended up in Benin Republic. Some ended up in Togo. The first president of Togo was a grandson of a Brazilian returnee, Olympio. And some ended up in Ghana, which is where my family come from. The Peregrino name, when you go to Ghana, you hear the name Peregrino. These were those who were involved in that slave rebellion that was deported from Brazil. So when I tell people that I have a slave ancestry, they look at me and say, how can you are from Ghana? But there are those who were returned by the Portuguese because they were engaged in slave rebellion. A majority of them were Muslims. So this is to buttress what Professor Sultan was saying about Muslims and how Muslims were organizing themselves here. Lamin Kebe was one of them. Not Kebe, where's Kebe? Kebe, I just saw Kebe Muhammad. There was one that was Lamin Kebe, who was known as a general. I mean, his military, acumen in organizing rebellion here in Americas. So we thank Allah for being Muslims.
Okay, one thing, I need to make a correction. You said slavery came first, right? Yeah. Okay, what did I say?
Say wrong.
You were right. You were right, they were wrong. Okay.
And the reason why you were right is because the Atlantic slave trade, all right, and the way Africans were treated in that Middle Passage, Africans bringing other Africans to the coast, selling them to these Europeans, made them not to have respect for us anymore. And it was from the way they treated us during the Middle Passage, they didn't see our humanity any longer. And that is where racism developed.
Well, okay. So I'm saying dollar figures is something here, right? But the way you institutionalize it is the point that I'm getting. The way you institutionalize it and make it about white supremacy and racism, like in 1615, Virginia passed a law that says that black folks, etc., they can't do this, they can't do that. They make laws on the books based on the color, 66, based on the color of your skin. They're institutionalizing racism. That's the point that I was trying to make. And it's all the Fugitive Slave Act. Fugitive Slave Act. that not only makes you a criminal, but it makes the general population, if they don't tell on you, they can be dealt with too.
When the first blacks came here, 1619, I want you all to know this. A lot of times you hear that the first blacks and slaves were brought here 1619. No, the first blacks that came here, because they had been baptized, I'm looking at the time, 2 minutes ago, because they were Christians, they had been baptized and given Christian name, they were treated as indentured servants. Some of them, even like Anthony Johnson, in 1625, had 350 acres of land in Virginia, and white people were working for him. So it wasn't until after 1641 that they beginning with Connecticut, they passed law that defined slavery on the basis of race. But before then, it was religion that determines whether you are free or not, Christianity. But when they changed it to race, then black people came to be defined as free. That's where you have they elevated the position of indentured servants who were white and then began to make them hopeful that you can have a better life, but the black, he's a slave forever. So white supremacy was institutionalized from that moment on. أقول ما تسمعون سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. You see what starting on time does? We get more time to ask questions and speak more. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you. Jazakumullahu kullal khair.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله.
Let's move this.
حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
No, no, yeah. Right, yeah.
Allahu Akbar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum. We want to give thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for granting us this occasion and this moment at this MASJID Farooq. And I want to thank each and every one of you that showed up to the lecture. This is the first of its kind that we're doing at MASJID Al Farooq, and we hope it will be an annual thing, inshallah. It will be an annual thing, inshallah. We give thanks to our Professor Sultan Byrd and our Ustaz Mubarak for the blessings that they've given us to be able to understand our deen and the history of our deen much better. We pray that may Allah grant them abundant barakah and increase their knowledge and increase our knowledge too. Ameen. For next week, inshallah, we are having the final session, and it's going to be two sisters, Sister Gina Muhammad and Sister Ndidi Okapo will be talking about the Walid Muhammad. We looked for somebody that can talk about Malcolm X, but we couldn't find anybody, inshallah. Oh, yeah, they will. Oh, mashallah, so they will split that up. We know that we have a logistic issue because there's going to be two sisters that are going to be speaking to us. So we'll figure out how to work that out, inshallah, as we know that we, men, brothers, we're supposed to roll our gates when sisters are talking, so we will not put you in that 1.5 hours to 2 hours of lowering your head in the lecture, so we'll figure the logistics out to make that work, inshallah, for next week. but please bring the family out. This is something very interesting that we're doing here. Imam Tafadhal, inshallah. So please.
Ahmed made a comment that we didn't respond to when he talked about the oneness of humanity, the question of no race. The reason why we're doing what we're doing is the ayah of the Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha wa ja'alnakum shu'uban wa qaba'ila lita'arafu. We have created you in nations and tribes and different groups so you might know one another. What we are doing is learning about one another. This is an education to teach us about the contributions that have been made by these people in terms of Islam. So that is to know one another. This is what we call social literacy. Getting to know about other people's culture, their history, their background, so it helps you to be able to see them in a different perspective. The second point also is the second point that I want to make in the light of that is when you look at the Quran, Allah is always referring us to history. Always referring us to history. So history helps us to be able to know where we are and how we arrive where we are. So I hope we see it from that context, inshallah. And thank you for those comments. Assalamu alaikum.
Normally we don't announce when somebody is doing something in the masjid. So please, let's look around you. If you have lost something, come and ask me about it.